cord nerve muscle reach out. That's when it's organized. But when it isn't, and we get seizures, we start with what we call a prodrome. So during the prodrome, this is when now that sodium inappropriately then enters cells to make that charge different. So the charge becomes more and more positive. So we also call it the premonitory phase, which can be hours to 24 hours. So this is when a person feels odd. Most people say they feel odd, but generally it's just unwell. It can be irritable, miserable, but it's that phase where you know something's not right, but those are those channels now starting to involuntarily, in simple terms, but there's also just an overactivation of voltage in the brain that is like just coming up, you know, and that's what explains that for hours to 2 days just before a seizure. And then we you know, at that positive stage where it reaches a critical point where an action potential fires without really your permission, your instruction, and then a seizure happens. To do that now, the brain recovers from that by changing the charge back, by then creating that exiting of potassium out the cell. But now what it does is when it recovers, it really overreaches because it really needs you almost to reboot from this. Is like having an explosion and then it tries to calm things down. So it recognizes it as what we call an aberrant active potential that was inappropriate and involuntary that happened, right? So that's like, I think that's the simplest way of then explaining it. So it's not moving on, or is it just me? Okay, it is me. Okay. So in that, like you said, we get mood changes. So people will say, oh, the person's incredibly moody, incredibly irritable. But if it coincides with that premonitory or prodrome time, that's common. That's normal because of the excessive irritability of the brain at the time, fatigue, people can be lethargic at the time, but there are also sleep disturbances at the time. Because remember, like the brain is getting inappropriate excitation without stimuli that is required. And of course, what is called the funny feeling, you know. But what also, with this slide, I'm trying to illustrate first, the top picture illustrates what we'd ordinarily like the balance between excitatory and inhibitory neurotransmitters to be. So the balance is when, so what glutamate is the main excitatory neurotransmitter in our brain, right? So that's what keeps you sharp, keeps you motivated, keeps you going, but GABA is what keeps you calm. And so the extremes of either are not wanted, but the extreme of glutamate is one of the chemicals or the reasons why you would get a seizure. So ordinarily we need a balance between the two, but in that prodrome phase, what is also happening chemically is that the excitatory one, now we see what's at the bottom of it, starts to create an environment of agitation, excitation in the brain, which now explains how a person feels or why a person would feel unwell, however they would describe it for them in the 48 hours preceding. This is different to an aura because scientifically an aura is part of the seizure. It's minutes before people who have one are clear it's going to happen within. So it's that the seizure has already started. But with the prodrome, it's the development of that environment of just irritability of the neurons, right? And it's at that time when we have built-in inhibitory neurons in our brains, in between those synapses, that will then stop or to stop electrical activity that is unwanted. And even those are suppressed at a time when a seizure is developing before it actually takes off. So that explains a lot of what one feels or goes through for hours or even 2 days before. So that's the premonition we've spoken about. Now, then we have the seizures. If one has generalized seizures where you lose consciousness, I always say it's like the main switch is off, everything's off, and like all of the areas of the brain are in seizure activity. But if people have those pocketed focal seizures, then it's part of those that will malfunction during the seizure, and then the seizure happens. And most people will complain fatigue, they're lethargic, that weakness and muscle pain, especially if you had a convulsive seizure, the headaches. And by definition, for seizures, you don't remember what happened. So there's amnesia of the episode and there's disorientation. But because when the brain tries to recover, it really, I won't say it overshoots, but it really reboots. Then there's our own opioids. So our body's own like morphine types chemicals are then produced at the time to really just try and suppress the irritability even more. But opioids also contribute to the disorientation, that need to recover from that, because it's the proper reboot, you know. And then there's the part where that's attached to the stigma, the embarrassment of what just happened, and the anxiety that comes with not knowing and being informed about the events, you know. So this is really, I'm going to try and explain this maze. So this is an EEG just to show. Up at the top, it's a normal EEG. This is brain waves sitting there with the ignition on, really, at the top. At the bottom is when we have seizures. So if we look at, I just want to see. So if we see these areas are seizures, the ones where the voltage spikes, you know, you can, you know, periodically you see them. But you also see just before that, I know it's easier to see when you're used to it, but like just before, the frequency of the brain slows down. So it's almost, what it does is, because it knows it's coming, its way to try and mend it is to make the brain not responsive to stimuli, so that we don't add extra stimulation to it. So that further adds to that prodrome, the dip of the prodrome you feel, or, you know, just before the seizure, because it's another inbuilt mechanism of trying to protect. And then you get the seizure, and again, after the seizure, the brainwaves slow down compared to what normal is. The reason I say this is to help people understand why they feel limited before and after a seizure, and why you need to give yourself the time and grace to let that period play out, because you need to get the neurochemistry back. You know, there's no amount of pushing yourself and all of that will get you out of that lull. So we tend to think because it's a feeling, you can get over it. But there's neurochemistry to show that actually your brain tries and shuts down before, in an attempt to not even get additional stimuli just before an upcoming seizure, and then it further shuts down afterwards to try and recover from it. So that's the main point I'm trying to make here. But also, in the whole idea of brain health, is we need to understand that all these neurochemicals are there for a reason, and need to understand their effects. Just briefly, glutamate, like I say, for motivation, cognitive, like, you know, goal setting and all that. GABA for relaxation. but also the effects of dopamine. Dopamine, yes, it's one of those that are involved with motivation and smooth movement, but we all know we've got these dopamine crises with the sources we look for dopamine. So ordinarily, we're supposed to have a good interplay between cortisol, the one that pushes you, tends to increase blood pressure, supposed to peak at 9 a.m., you're supposed to work, it's supposed to dip in the evenings. And it's meant to be an interplay between that and dopamine. Dopamine, when we use it properly, we understand that reward and the feeling from a reward. So instead of trying to get it from screens, from a coffee, tea, smoking break, and those short little addictions of it, but to get it from goal setting, achieving rewards, to get it from hobbies, to get it, those are healthy dopamine sources that then break your cortisol. Because we're a generation that runs on cortisol and it never dips, but something needs to break it. So that balance between the two is very important too. Oxytocin is really just what we get from human connection. Extremely protective for a lot of neurological problems. So in chronic neurological problems, the value of your support system and the people you love, and that there's a neurotransmitter attached to it that actually gets produced, that is protective. And before I go into this, I explain this because coming back to my role, yes, my role is to prescribe medication for epilepsy, but my role is to also explain why it's needed. But my role is also to explain what one can do on their own to create a protective environment for their brain. So a lot of the woke people on the social media, like I say woke, because I have children aged between 26 and 13. I have my cool lingo down. So a lot of this woke talk from them is, this person's not good for my nervous system. This is not, and I think if we delve deeper into protecting one's nervous system, and I'm going to just, as I close, suggest a few things. One, obviously, take treatment. So the treatment works on GABA receptors. So in that time that glutamate comes up, treatment works on GABA. It works on sodium channels because the whole thing starts with sodium getting into cells. It works on inhibiting glutamate directly. So there's ways, lots of chemical ways where the treatment acts. So it is required, but also having a routine. Having a routine and sticking to one speaks to the dopamine, that reward, this is what I do and I work for a bit and then this and then that. So that reward system keeps in check and your source of dopamine is then healthy. But then also having downtime with whatever you like to do. And I always say to people to do, because my teens always say, I like video games. But to do means your engagement in whatever it is you like to do. It breaks that cortisol cycle and your brain thinks, okay, we're in relaxation time. And those are the neurotransmitters that work. So I live in Pretoria, I work in Joburg. Everyone says, the traffic. But I say that's my prayer time, that's my thinking time, that's my time to get into the zone for work, to go drive back, get into the zone for my roles as a mom and a wife home. And it's imperative for me because that's how I regulate my nervous system. So my music on the way home, on the way to work, calm, prayerful, sultry, on the way. There I pray my children's music now. It's like really, because I can afford to then raise that stimulation because I'm going to a place of rest. So those little things, you'd be amazed how much of a difference it makes to how you go through your day. Exercise. So research shows a minimum of 30 minutes of cardio, the minimum of 3 times a week is neuroprotective, because during a seizure, you get decreased blood supply to the brain. During cardio, the brain is prioritized for oxygenated blood, like blood is shunted away from everywhere else for your brain. If you soak it in that blood, 30 minutes, minimum 3 times. If you do 5, wonderful. And people often say, hear cardio and say, oh no, I hate cardio, I do it, I hate it. But I always say to people, can get a step from game, get on it, off it. I just need your heart rate to go up for 30 minutes, because that's when the blood is going to your brain. That is important, not only for stress containment, but just for the health of your neurons. So when one has a neurological condition, your neurons are already under threat, and we need to, these are the things we can do to help, right? Sleep. During sleep, the brain does different things to what it does when you are sleeping. It doesn't sleep. So the body goes into factory mode when we sleep. We have all the proteins that are produced to facilitate enzymes that make us do what we need to do during the day. So that is, it's important to get a minimum 7 hours sleep. And people who are in sleep debt, sleep deprived, will get more frequent seizures. So it's not a nice to have, it is necessary. So the effect of stress on epilepsy is very direct. Unlike other conditions, it's very direct. If you have heightened emotional stress, all those neurotransmitters we spoke about coming into play, you will have more seizures. We need to manage that. Diet, usually it's keto diet, ketogenic diet spoken about, but there's research that shows that it doesn't always work. But the one diet that is neuroprotective, generally, according to literature, is the Mediterranean diet. It's rich in fish, rich in vegetables, and low in starch, And also, speaking on diet, glycemic index here, so sugar, white starches, not a good idea, because sugar also creates a hyper-stimulated environment. So when you have refined food, you get that shot up in glucose, as opposed to having food that gives a constant energy supply. So these things like switching on and off, when you get sugar, it's like these bouts of raises in energy that are not sustained. So that's where sugar and refined carbohydrates need to be watched. A seizure diary, last thing, very simple. And I was saying to one of my patients yesterday when I was explaining the seizure diary is, you're going to see me in a month's time, and you won't remember everything. But if you make a concerted effort to have a diary where you can either, even if it's electronic on the phone, tick or make a note when you don't feel right. And that's all I say, that's a requirement, because it helps in understanding whether seizures are controlled. Seizures that come from the temporal lobe are not witnessed. They are missed often by people who are non-neurologists. And the funny thing is the temporal lobe, for me, it's so beautiful and complicated about emotions and memory and learning and all of that. But structurally, it's so simple that it makes it prone to seizures. So there are not enough protective neurons in that area, those inhibitory ones. So, and those seizures are missed. So I say if you feel funny, tick, because we may be at a dose that decreases the generalized seizures, but we're not necessarily at the dose that has stopped the seizures that come from that lobe. And those seizures are extremely heavy on the emotions, because that's where aberrant, like it's the emotional center, memory center, and if you get aberrant activity here, there, that's not yours. It makes you feel very uncertain of even how you feel, because that stimuli in that area is it's not one. So it's something to look at. But that's in closing. Thank you very much. Thank you.
May I call up our moderator for this morning, and that is Ms. Marina Clark. Marina is the former National Director of Epilepsy South Africa for 20 years, now semi-retired. Marina remains actively involved in the advancement of the WHO's Intersectoral Global Action Plan, or the IGAP, which many of you have heard of, on epilepsy and other neurological disorders, and it's an advanced stage of domestication now as the South African National Intersectoral Action Plan sign-up, which Charlene is going to speak about further later. Marina is passionately involved.
$100, that's so cool.
Wonderful. The sound engineer of WITS is going to donate us 100 Rand. Marina is passionately involved in the Epilepsy SA Development Hub and continues to participate with this important process. She's also the chairperson of the Board of Trustees of the Epilepsy SA Educational Trust. She's very actively involved also in suicide prevention initiatives in Cape Town. I don't see any hats, but Marina, you wear quite a few of them. So thank you for coming and joining us all the way from Cape Town. Marina is our moderator for the session. Of course, you have met Dr. Vuisma Mandita. May I also please call to the stage Bharti Bartel. Bharti is a mental health advocate of over 20 years' experience in public mental health and community-based mental health. She is currently the National Executive Director of the South African Federation for Mental Health. Since joining the mental health sector in 2009, Bharti is passionate about the rights of persons with mental health conditions, including people with psychosocial and intellectual disabilities, and promoting the mental health, wealth and mental well-being of all. She has a master's degree in disability rights in Africa and serves on various policy and legislative committees advocating for the rights of persons with disabilities. And I believe I have a fun fact. Bharti is passionate about fitness and makes an effort to exercise daily. I'm allowed to say that because it was written down. And last but not least, I call Zanele Mtanzi. Did I say that correctly? Zanele, please come to the stage. Zanele is a community social worker at the Gauteng branch of Epilepsy South Africa with 9 years experience in the sector. She's worked for 5 years as a social auxiliary worker across various organizations and the last 4 years at Epilepsy SA, supporting people with epilepsy and other disabilities and their families. Zanele has extensive experience working with disadvantaged and vulnerable individuals, particularly psychosocial support, counseling, and practical interventions that promote emotional well-being, dignity, resilience, and the improved quality of life of people. Driven by a deep passion for social work, she's committed to continuous learning and professional growth to empower her clients and contribute meaningfully to lasting change in their lives and those of the communities. I think you can all agree we have a powerhouse panel in front of us. Ladies and gentlemen, however you self-identify, a round of applause. Ladies, may I ask you to sound check?
Okay, are we online and without any feedback? Everybody can hear us? And the one thing, Jason, you forgot to say is that the entire panel are women. So it's a powerhouse of women, you know. There's an old saying that says the best man for the job is a woman. I'm going to also, you know, there's also an old saying that says those who are last shall be first. And Zanele, you were the last one to be introduced, so I'm going to make you first in some of the questions we have, if that's okay with you. As a social worker, from your perspective, Zanele, what are the psychosocial challenges that impact most on the mental health of people with epilepsy?
Morning, everyone. From the social work perspective, the biggest psychosocial challenges that affect people with living with epilepsy is stigma, isolation, and being with people. Those people who are living with epilepsy, they felt that they can't even speak out. They can't even speak out because of the embarrassment. When they have seizure, that is the stigmatization. And that affects their well-being also. They start to withdraw. When they are withdrawing, that affects, they don't see even the purpose of living.
Zanelli, you talk about stigma as a major issue, but what about other social issues, things like unemployment and poverty, those kind of things? How does that affect the mental well-being of people?
That is a very crucial challenge to people who are living with epilepsy, simply because they are rejected even at work, simply because they have the seizures. They are not productive. So with that, they can't even go to the clinics to get their medication, not especially in rural areas. The service, they are very far. So for them to reach the services, it's so difficult. So poverty, unemployment results on the poverty and results on them to have a stress, mental withdrawal, whereby they can't be able to think well that what can they do.
Thank you. I think one of the things, and Dr. Manita, you said it earlier, that it's not only about the medical aspects. There's a lot more to it, and I think Charlene also referred to it, that people are whole human beings. It's not only a medical diagnosis. And I think your practice speaks for that. So it is something that I'm intrigued by, and that is the role of caregivers. Because a lot of people with epilepsy require care of some kind of level, some more than others. So what role does a caregiver play in the mental health outcomes of a person with epilepsy? And I'm referring here also to the fact that how can we better support caregivers, because they are also potential victims of poor mental health.
Caregivers, they play a big role, whereby they give support to people who are living with epilepsy. Also, they manage treatment. So with caregivers, however, even themselves, they have stresses, more especially when it comes to information. When they lack information, they feel that they are not doing well. So we need to support caregivers as well in terms of educational and support groups.
Thank you. Bhatia, I want to line that up with what Zanelli is saying. Do you find it's the same thing in terms of people experiencing mental health, that role of support and caregiving?
I think I'm on.
Yeah.
Yeah, good morning, if we're still in the morning. Yeah, I think, social care is vital. When you look at mental health, and you look at any epilepsy or neurological conditions, the social aspect of care, the support you get, the acceptance and the inclusion really helps a person feel well, feel included, and that goes a long way in terms of treatment.
Dr. Madita, can I come to you aligned to the comments made here? In your clinical experience, when does mental health issues become overlooked? I mean, do medical personnel consider this sufficiently, or is this something that's often overlooked?
Thank you. Can you hear me?
No.
And now? Okay,
Yeah,
there
there
we
we
go.
go.
So thank you for that. I think mental health issues are grossly overlooked. I think in the neurological space, we do the multidisciplinary team very well when it comes to strokes, but we don't do that enough for epilepsy. We really we focus a lot on treatment and not the other, pillars of treatment. So I think a multidisciplinary team, including social work and psychologists, would be great, including occupational therapy, would be really great to assist in trying to manage the other aspects of epilepsy.
And you've just opened a big can of worms there, because there's only 16% of South Africans that actually have a medical aid and access to private healthcare. Most people rely on public healthcare, and we know that there's a massive shortage in public healthcare. So that kind of overlooking is far more likely to occur in the public health sector than in the private sector. Are there specific ways that you have found that medical personnel can support the mental health and the mental well-being of people with neurological disorders like epilepsy?
You know, before I went into private practice, I worked at Kalankua Hospital in Pretoria. And that neurology clinic there is, you know, it has a fantastic head of neurology, but the numbers of people needing help are really, it's a lot. So what happens there is lots of people come in, how are you, how's your seizure, that's it. And for me, that's why the role of the medical personnel became so important to me, where we can empower people with information on how to address things that make living with epilepsy easier, things other than just giving treatment. And I think one of the things I've learned, like the first thing is information.
The problem is often, as you say, the numbers.
Sure.
So medical personnel, in especially the public health care, seldom have the time to actually sit down with a person and discuss what it means, the realities. Is there ways and means that we can improve on that? And if so, how can we make that better?
I think in state, I don't think, you know, state is frustrating. I'm glad you're here, Pruti, for both patient and doctor. You know, because you know the working at Mill Park makes me incredibly sad, and I ended up in private practice because the government didn't have a post for me, and it really, because I moved from two extremes, and it makes me really sad how much better the service is for much fewer people. And I think we really need to sit down and look at how we provide healthcare and restructure it completely in state. But I think from a personal perspective, that's why I've said giving info and trying to obviously package it within a short consultation just on how and why one can empower themselves to in addition to taking treatment, go through the epilepsy journey easier.
Thank you very much. Yeah, as Jason said earlier, I'm passionate about the Epilepsy South Africa Development Hub, and that's exactly what we do in the Development Hub. It's training programs. All of our facilitators are people with disabilities themselves, and we run a range of programs throughout the year where people can learn more. What can you do yourself? Because we know that there's limited resources available. Zanele, I want to ask you the question. We understand that there's very limited resources available in especially public health care. Do you find that people who go to see a doctor or a clinic are actually told about an organization like Epilepsy South Africa where they can go for more information? And what kind of interventions do you think has helped to improve mental well-being for people with epilepsy?
It needs the working hand. Not only the doctors, not only the social workers, but we need to work hand in hand in order to help people with epilepsy. How so? There are social issues that they face. The social worker can come in. There are issues of mental health. Those people, they need to be screened, more especially people with epilepsy, to be screened for mental, then being referred. That will assist a lot to know what to deal with.
Okay, so I'm also glad to say that for those who've not yet seen the sign-up, one of the goals in the sign-up is to address exactly these kind of issues so that people are able to learn more to move on. You know, when we talk about mental health, that requires another set of professionals that can actually deal with it. And Dr. Boyeswe, you said about the importance of psychologists, for example, social workers in a multidisciplinary team. But again, there's a shortage there, so people really struggle to access that service. Bhatti, in your experience, what kind of services can people access? Because, you know, psychological care or psychiatric care is incredibly expensive. if you don't have a medical aid, it's beyond your reach. So what is being done or what can be done to help people in that regard?
Thank you, Marina. I think, just following the conversation and looking at the vast differences between public health care and private health care. And studies do say that, 75% of the population do not have access to services. And that is why organizations like Epilepsy South Africa, like the Federation, civil society organizations are coming forward. They put out so much of information, and these are free services that you can access in communities. So find out which are these organizations in communities. SA Federation for Mental Health runs a help desk. You can write to us or you can call us. We can refer you to free services. And that is where, when you speak to a social worker, they will also be linked to other organizations, to medical help, and be able to facilitate support groups for yourselves so that you can get more information and know where to get the right help.
Thank you very much. There's nothing more I like than hearing something is free. So please make a note of this. Free services available. That means nada payment. So are social workers connected between organizations? I mean, for example, you're a social worker at an Epilepsy South Africa branch. Are you familiar with the services that the Federation for Mental Health and other organizations offer in your area, and are you able to refer?
Yes, Marina, we do refer. I'm very much aware because we work hand in hand, as I've said, that for us to assist people who are living with epilepsy is to work with other departments, other organizations, in order to, simply because we can't have everything alone. So if maybe the person is having epilepsy, having some problems, then we refer to mental health to test, with this condition, with this action, we can't say it's epilepsy now. Now we need to understand what exactly that it is. That is when we refer. So we make sure that we work with other departments or other organizations that deal with other conditions.
Thank you very much. So what I'm hearing is that for most people, the social worker at your local branch is one of your first ports of call. To actually go there and say, these are the issues. They will then find the right services at a reasonable cost or at no cost to be able to support you. I want to come back, Dr. Mandita, to you and just ask this question. Is there certain mental health conditions, disorders that are more common in people with epilepsy or neurological disorders than in the general population? So are there specific kind of conditions that you see in your practice?
I think people living with epilepsy tend to have higher rates of depression and anxiety, and I think that speaks to the unpredictable nature of the disease, But with regards to comparison to the general population, it's not necessarily high, but there is a clear, distinct association. Increase in numbers in the population.
Thank you. I'd like to ask our other two panelists, do you have the same experience that depression, anxiety is more typical in neurological disorders?
Yeah, for certain. Data does show us that persons with epilepsy and neurological conditions do have a higher rate of, or show higher signs of anxiety and depression, and that comes more because of the social aspect. It's one thing to have a diagnosis, but living with the condition and experiencing how society reacts to you, whether you're at school or in employment, you almost have to mask that condition because people see you differently and there's so much of discrimination. So because you are so much more battling the whole issue of social stigma, your anxiety will naturally become higher. And when people exclude you, you start feeling depressed from the isolation. So we do see higher tendencies of anxiety and depression.
So Nelly, your experience?
On my experience, it is true what Dr. Patel is saying. From my clients, you can see that there is a pressure on them, so that trigger the anxiety. You can see these people now, they develop some other things whereby now they don't want to, they have anger, they are fighting, they are doing so many things, so you see that there is a pressure on them.
I'd like to pose a question. As Jason said, I'm involved with suicide prevention in Cape Town, and we know that there's a distinct link between depression and suicide. And there's also a truth that the most vulnerable community in South Africa are young men. They are the most likely people to commit suicide, and they're far more effective than women. Women normally do things like overdoses. Men seem to be very direct. They do things like shoot themselves. So my question is this also a trend we're finding, that you have more men struggling with it but not able to communicate it? You know, in South Africa we have this saying about cowboys don't cry and real men don't cry. You know, you've got to be tough about it. Are men with neurological disorders more vulnerable to mental health conditions, and particularly things like depression, anxiety leading to suicide?
I think men definitely underreported, you know. So women will likely, you know, report how they feel, but given how society reacts to what we perceive as weakness, men tend to be less likely to admit to having any mental health challenges. But I think, like Sister Nella was saying, that you see it now as an erratic behavior, the impatience, you know, irritability, substance abuse, you know, it shows itself in other ways.
I think what you're saying is very real, and I want to ask the two panelists next to me, Zanele, Bati, how do we deal with that? How do we make it easier for people to speak about mental health conditions, and especially for men who were brought up to be tough?
I think, you know, I mean, we know we now focus specifically on suicide prevention, and it is part of the national mental health policy as well. And the idea behind that is that the more we have awareness, the more we have platforms where people can talk about their mental health condition, the more people can find out where to get help. With men, and especially young men, like Doctor has said, is that they don't want to talk about it because it's perceived as a weakness. And when men experience depression or anxiety, it's not like they are sad or quiet. It shows in their substance use, and it shows in anger. And when we as society notice our loved ones showing these signs, we must be comfortable enough to speak to them as well, to say, but you know, my son is not generally an angry person. Why is he angry now? Should I talk to him and say, how can I help you? Where can we go to talk about this? So you're including the person, you're showing them love and empathy instead of pointing a finger and fighting with them. So when we see these signs, feel courageous enough to approach the individual. But we as individuals also need the education. So empower yourselves with that education on how you can help people.
With men, they bottle things. That is the reason for them not to speak out, and they ended up having depressions. I think the involvement, there is this thing of GBV. It seems as it's only women and children, not men. So many, they feel isolated. That is why they don't speak out. They do things that they ended up having depression. So as Doctor is saying here, what needs to be done, the awareness is very important. You must involve them. Department, the social work department, the social workers, they need to go speak to them for them to see that they are part of the society. They are so important as well. That with that awarenesses, they will be able to speak out. Thank you.
I think what we're seeing here is that it's a whole big circle. It starts with something, as Dr. Madita explained to us, with chemical changes in the brain that causes a seizure. That seizure leads to emotional reactions. Those emotional reactions can become serious mental health conditions like depression, like anxiety. Those in turn lead to things like substance abuse. And substance abuse again leads to things like GBV, gender-based violence, where people who are not getting the help they need act out, and they tend to lash out to the person closest to them. That's just the reality. I want to come back a little bit to the medical aspect. Are there certain side effects of medication that worsens mental health outcomes?
The principle of putting someone on medication is ideally, it ought to be very individualized, because we have to look at, firstly, cost of the medication, availability, more importantly, effectiveness of it, but side effect profile for the profile of the patient, right? So if I am going to prescribe certain medication to a young person who's currently feeling emotionally volatile, we know that there are certain drugs that can make that worse. So we then stay away from drugs that then make that seesaw of mood changes worse.
But what happens in a situation where, people go to a private healthcare clinic, they have the time to discuss it. When you're in public healthcare, firstly, you're going to spend most of the day sitting waiting, hopefully, to see a doctor, not necessarily even a neurologist.
Right.
And you are then prescribed a medication, and you then start having side effects. And it's difficult to then go back to the clinic in a short period of time to say, this is what I'm experiencing. People tend to feel that, the medication was given, so they've just got to keep taking it.
Yeah.
And then I also want to come back to Bharti and ask, many mental health conditions are treated again with drugs. What happens in the interaction between anti-seizure medication and mental health medication? Does that not worsen the whole situation? I see you shaking your head no. And then I'll come to you.
I think yes and no, because anti-seizure medication is aimed at suppressing the milieu or the environment of excitability in the brain. The downside of that is people can experience depression, can be lethargic, and people have, you can't predict which side effect a person is going to have until they have it, right? But when we then treat things like anxiety and depression, we work on similar receptors, neurotransmitters that also try, the aim being to decrease anxiety and balance out chemicals that cause depression.
Yeah, just a disclosure, I'm not a medical officer, I'm not a doctor. I come from a human rights perspective, and I think the question you raise is absolutely critical. Again, it comes to the individual. If you know you are getting your services at a public healthcare facility, and you know the nurses there are inundated, there's 600 people in a queue, you got like 15 minutes. But when you see a nurse, or you see any medical officer, the onus is on you to say, listen, I have anger issues, or I'm not sure of my medical condition. Maybe there's an underlying mental health condition. So make sure you are screened for both. If you know you're diagnosed with epilepsy, demand that I want screening for mental health, because that is your right. And when you have that screening done, at least whoever is prescribing the medication has the full history of your circumstance.
So again, we're talking a human rights issue here, and I think what's important is if you've not seen it, In South Africa, we have something called the Patient's Rights Charter. That gives you your rights as a patient, how you should be treated. If you've not seen it, ask your social worker about it, ask the organization near you, ask the health facilities. You'll often see it stuck up like an A4 page, like the back of a door somewhere where nobody reads it. Go and read it. Find it online. South African Patient Rights Charter. And make sure you know what your rights are so that you can speak up for yourself. I'm also excited by what you're saying and how much of what you were saying ties in with the SINAP. We found that the International Organization for Persons with Epilepsy last year did a survey around the world, 15 countries in the world, and they asked non-medical questions about the needs of people with epilepsy. And one of the exciting things happening this year in South Africa is we're going to do a similar thing. So you will, as a person with epilepsy, a caregiver, have the opportunity to actually speak up about what your needs are. So please talk to your social workers about it at the branches. They'll tell you more about how you can participate as a person with epilepsy. I want to move the shift across to the audience and ask, are there questions that anybody would, oh, immediately I see hands going up, hot topic. Okay, let me start here, the gentleman over here. Let's put your hand up first. Thank you. You might need another rubber. Oh, this gentleman over here.
Morning, my name is Brian Mazugogo. I'll cut my CV. Let me just ask the question. Firstly, I would say we need a holistic approach. But I also want to know from the doctor, what do you think about, because we have medical medicine, we also have herbs. What's your view on herbs? Natural plants.
You know, my standard answer to that question is that because a lot of people ask about either traditional homeopathic and even marijuana as an alternative. And the thing about herbs of any kind is, unlike medication, we don't know how much of what we are giving. So the reason we can then we can confidently dispense medication is we know how much of anything is in it, and we have trials to fall back on to say this is what the side effect profile is and what to expect, and we have lab tests that then can tell us if the drug has reached toxicity levels. The thing with herbs is, firstly, that your medical doctor is not trained on that, but also just the proportion. So, for instance, marijuana works on GABA receptors, which even your epilepsy medication works on. So if somebody has a joint, I always say to them, where did you buy it? Where is it grown? So how much THC is in it versus all of that. So it you know, the logic is that it will reduce seizure activity. But because we don't know how much of the active compound is in it, the other side of working excessively on GABA is decreased motivation.
So what you're saying is it's really difficult to determine the dosage.
Absolutely.
Okay, does that answer you?
Good day, everyone. My name is Onela Mazwi from Kabeja. I don't want to get emotional. I was diagnosed with epilepsy in 2019, and I've been on medication since, but the past couple of years have been the worst. Basically from suffering, from discrimination, and I believe ignorance about epilepsy as a whole. I've got a variety of questions for the panel, but I just want to ask a few questions from the doctor specifically, because I ended up being diagnosed with something called psychogenic non-epileptic seizures. So I struggled basically to understand the difference between the two. So if you can perhaps shed some light to that and how that basically impacts on depression, anxiety, and panic attacks as well.
So,
Thank you.
chemically speaking, psychogenic non-epileptic seizures means that if you were on an EEG, like I had shown, then we wouldn't, one wouldn't see seizure activity emanating from the brain. So they usually happen if somebody has a mental health component that is significant, you know. So it means that it doesn't emanate from all the things that I described with abnormal charges and neurotransmitters. It's more from the mental health, stress, anxiety perspective, right? It's not uncommon. Lots of people with epilepsy do get psychogenic seizures as well, in between the actual epileptic seizures. Its relationship to anxiety and depression is direct. It's a manifestation of it.
Good.
Thank you.
Question here.
Good day, good people. My name is Jory. I'm a social worker from Epilepsy A, Gauteng branch. Doctor, I have a question. Because right now we are preaching support and stigma in the society where people living with epilepsy should disclose so that they can get support. But then what happens in the work industry, because they are afraid to disclose their condition on their CVs. Okay, then that we can move. So to what level should epilepsy be so that a person can qualify for disability grant? Because they can't disclose, when they disclose they don't get their jobs, and then when they go to SASSA, they're saying they're not disabled, they can't get the grant. So to what level should epilepsy be so that they can qualify for the DG?
It's a very good question.
Maybe you can weigh in on this, but I'm not aware of people living with epilepsy getting disability grant unless there's also a physical disability impeding movement, impeding functionality of the body, which it is an unfair sort of yardstick to have, but a person with seizures getting that kind of assistance would be somebody who suffered a stroke and then has seizures, for instance, because there's a physical impediment.
Can I add to that that the criteria for a disability grant is very clear, and it does not exclude neurological disorders. What happens is that when the assessments are done, the medical personnel doing the assessments interpret it in a different way. And one of the things that's on the agenda of Sign Up to do is to address exactly that, to do training of healthcare workers in the public sector. And that's why we're working with the Department of Health and the World Health Organization's office in South Africa to address that very issue, so that the criteria is equally applied everywhere. Because if you go to different provinces, you'll find that in one province, a person with epilepsy is completely ignored for a DJ. But in another province, they will get it. You know, one of the tests we've seen they do is they will throw a pencil at you. And if you can catch the pencil, they say, oh, you're not disabled. So, this is the reality. It reminds me a little bit of the racial classification we had way back in the 60s and 70s. Okay, I'm going to allow one more question over here. This lady over here.
3 questions at the back. Look, colleagues, with respect and time, I just want to defer to our National Director, and I can see that we've been holding you for some time. So, I can feel the energy in the room. And we're all wanting to get into that. We are here for a while. We're going to go into a tea break shortly. We want to give our colleague from Gauteng an opportunity to talk first. We are going to cover a lot of ground today. Some of it will answer your questions, but please keep that question and let's move on. Charlene.
Yeah, just quickly to add to what Jason's saying is, please, your questions, write them down, and we'll have an extended quick Q&A session at the end of today that we can insert because of this topic. And we specifically put this topic on our agenda today because it is a critical conversation. And as you can hear, every single topic that's come out of this incredible panel is absolutely prevalent and topical to South Africa. So why is our action plan so important? Because these topics have emanated from the action plan, highlighted them, and we're going to address them during the day further. I wanted to just add to the question of disability. We are at the final stages of the Disability Act in terms of writing it. I've been privileged as South African Disability Alliance chairperson to be chairing the forum for the civil society's input onto the Disability Act. And we've got an incredible panel that's been doing that. The Act is now in its circulation in government, and it's gone back to the Law Reform, the Law Commission. Why am I saying that and bringing that in? Because for the first time, neurological disorders, and specifically epilepsy, are coded into the Act, which is an enormous step. So that question, very shortly, and that Act has been in process for 10 years and has made so much inroads and progress last year because of the focus from the President's office, and Putti's here representing disability from the President's office. So we've got first-hand information what's happening in that regard. So this is not pie in the sky. I've seen the document, and Marina was part of, she's part of her and I inputting these documents. So I just wanted to add to that, taking that step.
I'd like to wrap up this session by coming back to our panelists. And I want to ask each of you, if there is one key takeaway you want to give to people sitting here and listening to you, what do you think is something you'd like people to remember from this session? Dr. Mandita.
I think it's to remember what one can do to assist their healing process, and I think information lets you know that.
Interesting, if you have the Epi News that's on your seat, you'll see the first quote on the inside page is exactly that. Don't let what you can't do hold you back from what you can do. Thank you. Sanele?
What I love with people to remember from this session is stigmatizing. We must stop stigmatizing. The thing of stigmatizing makes our people to be more vulnerable. So if we can go out here understanding that everyone can have whatever at any given time, that will make you not to stigmatize, accept people as they are.
Thank you. We also need to remember that stigma comes from fear, and fear comes from a lack of knowledge. So the more we know, the more we will be able to fight stigma. Also be careful not to self-stigmatize. Don't stigmatize yourself.
Thank you. You know, I wear a mental health cap. So for me, mental health is a human right. And you can't separate medical care, especially in epilepsy, from human rights. We need to see people with epilepsy as a whole person. And when you treat epilepsy, you can't ignore the social aspects and the human rights aspects. So we need to see the person as a human being, and we need to accept them as a human being. So I think that's important for me.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank the three ladies. It's been a lively discussion. I think there's lots more questions. Maybe we can have a quick tea break now, Jason?
I'm twice empowered. Before we go to tea, and I know that some of you are dying to have that break, Shirley wants to have a quick word, and then I want to introduce a very passionate friend of mine. You're not getting away with it. You have to come up. You have to come and share your energy, because people going to tea are going to feel very empowered. So just a quick word. Thank you very much to our panelists. Thank you very much. Shirley, you want to start with a quick word?
So, just before Tsabang stands up, I want to know, and I really am going to ask each of my fellow persons with epilepsy, if you are willing to disclose in the room, would you stand up if you've got epilepsy? I want to give any of you that haven't stood up the encouragement to stand up. Because to stand up in a room of 130 people, and there are 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 15 of us in this room with epilepsy, does that give you an idea of how inaccurate the numbers in South Africa are when they say 1 in 100? So I'd like each of you to please write your names outside, because I would like you, if you just go on the register and disclose, I'd like to have your voice on the epilepsy needs survey in the next 2 months. So guys, to Desiree, my assistant, please give these warriors a massive round of applause.
And it's now my privilege to introduce yet another warrior. It's our winner of our 2025 Flame of Courage Award, Tsipang Seroka. Tsipang is a champion for epilepsy awareness and acceptance who conducts educational talks and leads the Gauteng community IGAP programs locally. He is an outspoken person whose leadership skills have been well recognized by both those who nominated him and the national leadership who selected him as our 2025 winner. As a motivated young man with epilepsy, he has grown as a public speaker who leads from the front, is patient with people, you have more skills than me, and doesn't get frustrated easily. You have more skills than me. We applaud his ongoing efforts to break down the stigma of having epilepsy and educating the wider public whilst empowering fellow persons with invisible disabilities through action and leadership. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Tsipang Seroka.
Okay, is the mic on?
Yeah, that should be it. Yeah.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Before, I think or I assume my face looks familiar to some of you, but to those who don't know me, I'm Tsipang Seroka. I'm from Epilepsy SA Gauteng branch. I'm from Epilepsy SA Gauteng branch, and I'm also a person living with epilepsy. So because of time, I'll just be quick. After hearing today's discussion about epilepsy, about mental health, about care, I want to share what all of this really looks like in real life. Beyond the clinics, beyond policy rooms, and inside the community. So this is my lived experience. When epilepsy changed my life, epilepsy entered my life suddenly. At that time, I was so much in love with football. I dreamed of playing professionally one day. It gave me confidence. It gave me purpose and direction. Then I experienced my first seizure. I was confused. My family was also confused about my condition. We did not understand what was going on or what epilepsy really meant. Slowly, things began to change. I questioned myself. I lost confidence, and I had to hang up my soccer boots. And that was the most painful experience I ever encountered also. Because at that time, I was so much in love with football. So because of confusion, I had to hang up my soccer boots, and I wasn't ready. So it was painful for me. And without planning to, I started pulling away from people, from opportunities, from life itself. What people don't always see. Living with epilepsy is not just only about seizures. It is about uncertainty. It is about how people look at you differently. It is about explaining yourself again and again. Sometimes it affects how you see yourself, or sometimes it affects how others treat you. Emotionally, I was hurt and frustrated. Morally, I was exhausted, and spiritually, I was dead. Physically, I was smiling, and on the surface, everything seemed okay. But inside, it was different. It is hard sometimes when people see the smile, but they don't see the pain behind that smile. There were days where I wanted to speak out, to tell people how heavy living with epilepsy felt. But I stayed quiet. Why? Because I was afraid of being misunderstood. I was afraid of being judged. And sometimes the loneliness became overwhelming. So it was very, very tough for me. But then I thought about the people who count on me, people who still need me, and that thought kept me going. This is why today's discussion about epilepsy, mental health is very, very important. because seizures are challenging, emotional and struggles are just as real also. So now I'm coming to my personal challenges. Before and after my diagnosis, I struggled with acceptance. I was still in denial. Because of this, there were times where I even defaulted my medication. And that decision made even things worse. It came with serious consequences. My seizures moved from mild to becoming severe. After my diagnosis, I had to adjust, and not just medically, but also to an epilepsy lifestyle. Epilepsy also affected me physically. It affected my shoulders to a point where I couldn't even twist them properly anymore. They dislocate easily. These are the realities that people don't always see. But over time, I managed to adjust. I've learned to accept my condition. And today, I'm very confident, proud, and comfortable of who I am. Now, I'm coming to the part where I'm evolving from a participant to an advocate now. As my confidence grew, I began speaking out. I started participating in awareness campaigns. I spoke to communities. I shared my story, not because it was easy, but because it mattered. I realized that when one person speaks, others find courage to speak too. That is what epilepsy in action really looks like, right? When a lived experience informs services, when communities challenge stigma, and when people living with epilepsy finally take their place in the society or in our communities. Now I'm coming to the 2025 Flame of Courage winner award. Being named the Flame of Courage award winner is one of the greatest honors in my life. This award is not just about me. It represents every person living with epilepsy and other neurological conditions who chooses to stand up, who chooses to speak out, no matter the challenge they encounter. I dedicate this award to my family, to Epilepsy SA, and to everyone who supported me or navigated the journey with me. Now, this is a message that must be heard, and I want to say this very loud and clear, that epilepsy is not an infection. Living with epilepsy does not make me feel less capable or less human. I deserve to be respected. I deserve to be included. I deserve to be loved. I deserve to be heard. And so does every person living with epilepsy and other neurological conditions. Now, this is my pledge to Epilepsy in Action now. After everything shared today, oh, okay.
When you make your pledge, now you can read it.
Can someone hold it for me so I can feel comfortable? Okay. I, Tsepang Soroka, the 2025 Flame of Courage Award winner, pledge to stand as an advocate for people living with epilepsy and other neurological conditions. I pledge to use my lived experience to support others and to educate others on also. I also pledge to work with organizations like Epilepsy SA to strengthen awareness, to promote inclusion, and to turn policies into reality in our society and communities. As I'm closing, because time is not on my side, I make this pledge because change does not happen on paper only. It happens when people take responsibility. This is my pledge as a 2025 Flame of Courage Award winner. The Epilepsy Pledge reminds us that everyone has a role to play government, professionals, organizations, caregivers, and communities, and also people living with epilepsy and other neurological conditions. Today, I have shared my story. I have made my pledge, and I invite each and every one of you here to make yours too. Together, let us turn Epilepsy in Action into reality, where people living with epilepsy and other neurological conditions are visible, valued, supported, and empowered. So thank you so much for listening.
What's it? Sorry, guys. can I have 5 more minutes before you have tea? I want each person on the panel that's just come to make their quick pledge. Or do you want to do it just now? Okay, I'll leave you just
Can
now.
I just say, I want to honor Stefan with what you said. Thank you very much. And I want to tell you a little. Okay, I need to be louder. I'm not loud enough, apparently.
I'm so sorry.
I'm
they
normally
ran away
loud.
from you people.
Okay, I want to tell you a story. The Flame of Courage Award was born out of one person with epilepsy at the AGM of one of our branches standing up and telling their story. And at that stage, our vice chairman was a man by the name of Tim de Villiers, also a person with epilepsy. And we sat next to each other and he nudged me and he said to me, we really should have an award for people like that. And that's how the Flame of Courage was born, from one person standing up and sharing their story. And it's almost like we've come full circle to have one person standing up and sharing their story. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam former National Director. All protocol observed. Professional pensioner. Good people, now is a good time for a break. With respect, please may I ask, because in the interest of time, we are going to keep it to 15 minutes. Please have a tea. The toilets, as I said, as you go out in the foyer, there's signage to take you to disability toilets, men's and ladies. Please come back to the venue. We will start whether you're here or not. But thank you. Please for being here.
Herding cats, Jace.
Herding cats.
What do you want me to say? I mean, you've said everything. People have said everything. No, I'm not going to get carried.
Don't talk about that.
I'll talk a bit about it. There's something I have in mind. If I do that,
1%. You're the winner. Right, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this on you on that one. That one. Right, well, let's plug it in. That is good charge. And we go from there. Is it a normal USB? Just see if I can find shit I don't have. Good people, please can I ask you to take your seats? We must resume with the program. I believe that there is a small lechotla that's currently taking place in my office. There's a high-profile lechotla in my office between the WHO, government and Epilepsy South Africa, and I'm not party to it. We'll send you notes. Right. Good people. We now resume our program. It is my distinct pleasure to call on Ms. Puti Babelebele from the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities, Chief Director in Advocacy and Mainstreaming in the Office of the Presidency, if I'm correct in saying. A strong supporter and advocate for invisible disabilities and a partner of Epilepsy South Africa. She's worked as a public servant in various government portfolios and at various levels of responsibility over these many years. Puti is a developmental communicator and a social activist with a wide range of experience on transformation and government matters. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ms. Puti Babelebele.
Good afternoon. How's everybody? Are you happy to see government in the room? Yes. Are you? Yes. It's important to know if you're happy to see government in the room, no matter how we feel, no matter what we think about it, but it's a necessary one. Yeah. Let me take this opportunity to thank Program Director Jason and Epilepsy SA under the leadership of the National Director for actually extending an invitation for this Indaba today. But also just to acknowledge persons with epilepsy. We steer away from saying persons living with epilepsy because identity is critical. When you say somebody lives with something, now it might mean they live with it, without it, the next minute. So the acceptable terminology is persons with epilepsy, so that it sticks in our minds and our consciousness that epilepsy is real. It's not something like a hat that you take off and put on as and when. The carers of persons with epilepsy as parents, children, and so forth, especially the women, because we know that caregiving is normally a responsibility that is given mostly to women. Maybe by default, but it has become like that in every respect. Organizations of persons with disabilities that are here, especially the organizations of persons with mental and neurological conditions, our esteemed medical practitioners. You know what? Whenever I'm with doctor here for our free consultation that we just had earlier on, because it was a free consultation, I'm sure if you were to walk into a consultation room, you'd pay enough, and of which we must pay. Whenever I'm around her, you know, for me it's a free consultation because she also illuminates and expands and empowers me in terms of issues around neurological conditions and not just limited to epilepsy. And I really want to acknowledge you, doctor, because from the time we met, you know, I was saying to Charlene that it's almost as if we could multiply you. We could have a multiplier effect and just multiply you. And when I say multiply you, I'm talking about the depth of how you unpack and simplify these complicated medical issues to us as a people to understand. For me to understand just as a person, as a mother, and as a sister and a sibling and a relative of somebody who's got epilepsy in my space at that level. And I just want to applaud you for that. But I see she has left, but the South African Federation of Mental Health, amongst the many organizations that we work very closely with, where we have forged partnerships actually to ensure that we elevate issues of mental health, but also to government departments that are here in your different caps. I've seen that we've got social workers, we've got the Department of Health at a policy level and a strategic level. We've got people from hospitals that are here, and I really would want to appreciate that, because it's exactly just that. Just being able to identify your role in this particular matter and where you can identify an opportunity for you to make a difference in that aspect. And for me, that is very, very applaudable, and it's critical. Also, the World Health Organization representatives that are here, Emily, your organization, there's not much we can do without World Health Organization because it assists us at that level to be able to do the cross checks and balances in terms of how we're faring as a country, how we're faring as a continent, in terms of global dynamics. But also colleagues from, I brought people from our own office, our Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities. How I wish that we could expand this platform, because it's a necessary platform. It's a necessary engagement session which should be expanded and not be limited to just us that are here. I long for a day where we would have indeed people who are in human resources of institutions, be it public or private. I long for a day that I would have people who deal with the financial matters in institutions, people who deal with service delivery, and even people who deal with policy, legislation and laws, to be in this room. Because their absence sometimes means that at the end of the day, it will be us talking here, but if we don't reach out to them, because they make particular decisions which have got an impact on our livelihood and how we live as people and as persons with epilepsy and neurological conditions. I long for that day. But I want to believe that with the systems and processes that we have put in place to date, working collaboratively with organizations like Epilepsy SA, with academia, my apologies for not acknowledging our host, with academia and researchers and so forth, and also with other government institutions, I believe that we're beginning to turn that tide. And that is why epilepsy and issues of neurological conditions are now on everybody's lips, because that's where we need to get them to. Sign up is not about a document that sits in the office. It's about making it fashionable to talk about these matters. It's about acceptance, so that we destigmatize what has been a long perpetuated stigma. It's about you self-accepting yourself as a person with epilepsy. And I want to start there. If you don't accept yourself, don't expect anybody to do that. Don't expect that. And it goes with anything in life. It can be weight issues, anything. If you don't accept yourself for who you are and begin to speak about yourself from where you are, nobody's going to know, because knowledge is not picked from somewhere. Nobody's going to accept and nobody's going to understand. And for me, the sign-up is about forging and fostering for that level of knowledge and acceptance at that basic level. It starts at home. It starts with two parents. Or let me just say, it starts with two people who decides to have a family and have children. For me, that's where the level of knowledge goes down to. That for me is where sign-up starts. All of us come from a home. All of us have parents. All of us are parents now. All of us are going to be parents to those that are still going to be in that stage. So if you don't foster for acceptance and knowledge at that level, how then do we even begin to self-support and support others and ensure that we are supported? At that just level, you're still in your home. You're going to walk out of the gate of your home into a community. So if we are a community of people who do not accept, you can imagine what then happens. Because from the community, we get into our cars, we get into our modes of transport, we go to a particular place, be it a workplace, be it a church, be it a school, we go there. And we go into those environments and there are other people with us. Now, as a community of people who can't even accept, how do we expect the workplace to change if our mindset have not changed? Now, in the workplace, at different levels and pipelines, you have got people who must implement, who must buy, who must do policy, who must enact, who must ensure this and that. If that is not in the mind, how do we expect any of that to happen? So I'm trying to say to you, when you're sitting here, the 130 of us that are here, let's begin to locate our role in terms of actioning. That which we are saying is about actioning and making people aware. I'm looking at a room of young people here. And I'm asking myself, you know, there's social media, online platforms that are so full of negativity. And we're all complaining about it. We're on Twitter, right? We're on Facebook, all of us, ne? Okay, I'm of that age where I'm still on those platforms. I've not gained the confidence to be on these new ones. Yes. So you know these things go with age, right? So you're on Instagram, you're on TikTok. Instead of shouting at people who stigmatize, why don't we ourselves drive the narrative that informs and educate people on these platforms ourselves here? If you have a TikTok page, why are we just a minute of a message? You know, I saw a very beautiful TikTok clip. My kids tried to get me on TikTok, so what they do, they just send me these TikTok videos. And for some odd reason, my phone then starts picking up on some of these TikTok things. I saw a clip of a young girl in deep rural Muleji in Limpopo, who's a person with albinism. She documents, I think she's 9 years, 9 or 7. This child documents her daily life. as a person with albinism. Just from waking up and having breakfast, interactions with the family as a person with albinism, for instance. And you learn a lot from the unsaid in that clip. What more for us, persons with epilepsy? So I'm encouraging you to say, let's not just look at big platforms only, because there are levels to these things. Epilepsy SA can organize this platform. It takes resources, it takes logistics, it takes all of that. But there are those things that don't require those hefty resources. We're here today to draw from the knowledge, right? From the well of knowledge. Now we have drawn, now we're going to sit with the knowledge that we have. I've drawn, in terms of my responsibility in government, I know now, from what Doctor was saying, from what Bhatti and Zanele, from Zen was saying about the gaps. For me, it's my job to identify opportunities in the gaps that they were talking to and see how best I can link up with health, with DSD. That's my job at that level. But not all of us are there. All of us are somewhere in the pipeline. So I'm saying that the narrative is in us to drive it. It's in us. We can make our narrative known for the better. Let people come. People are angry with a YouTube video. I was asked that we must condemn, and I said I'm not going to condemn it. Somebody must post a video that speaks positively against what that person did. Condemning, we all condemn. I'm not going to condemn it. But somebody must speak against that. A person depicting a child with cerebral palsy and doing funny gestures as a person who's able, who's got that ability, and making fun of it. And people are, no, we're disgusted. No, this is, what kind of an adult does that? And I'm like, so perhaps persons with cerebral palsy needs to post a video and deal with that so that they educate people, because that person clearly needs education and needs to be aware of what that is about. So our collaboration as the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities, with Epilepsy SA, with the Department of Health and other stakeholders, it was born from just that conviction that we have got to ensure that the pipeline, in the pipeline of all this, we're doing something, and somebody does something. I must be honest with you. We don't have the luxury of resources. We don't. As I was stepping outside, somebody said to me, no, we need to expand this and ensure. I said, yes, organize. Let's organize. Where you are, whether you're in an institution of higher learning in a disability unit as a student, organize. Organize other students, and not just students with epilepsy, but all other students. Because persons with epilepsy don't live in a vacuum. They live in a society of other people who have got also other issues. We all have other issues. So that one voice, the 130 of us that are here, if each one can reach out to 20 people on a Saturday, wherever you are, whether you're at church for 5 minutes, whether you are at a stock fair, whether you're at a festival, and you just, as you're having fun there, but ask, why don't we have persons that are, why are we excluding people from coming to these entertainment places? Why are we not creating efforts to actually get our family members who would want to come with us to concerts, with us to be there, so that the environment can become enabled for them also? But no, we keep them at home. We go, and nobody sees anything wrong. To correct, by the way. So I'm just saying that the 130 of us that are here have got a particular responsibility in the whole pipeline of ensuring that issues and myths and perceptions, stigmatization of persons with epilepsy and other neurological conditions are dispelled and done away with. The National Action Plan, Intersectoral Global Action Plan that we have that we have drafted so well with the stakeholders that are here, was not an easy process. Somebody will ask why it took so long. It takes so long to convince people. It took very long for persons with epilepsy to just accept themselves. So you've got to put effort, commitment, and time into that process. So you have to have a resolve in you and be intentional about it. So it took time, and I'll speak from what we went through as government, just to get the Department of Health. And please don't look at government departments in terms of public servants. You know, those politics that we have with public servants and all of that, no. Because environments are environments. And sometimes it takes a certain push to get everyone into one room and understand why. And it takes one to educate. So because we are policymakers, we had to collaborate with Epilepsy SA and other organizations of persons with dealing with mental and neurological conditions to actually sit down and make the people that we know will make a difference in that organization and make them understand the why and the what is not happening. And from there we got the buy-in. And here I'm talking about the admin will, the will of the broader people that must make things happen. The political will we've got. I know it's something you might not want to hear, but the political will we've got. I don't have to convince a minister about anything on disability. We agree. But the actual people that must make it happen, the actual people that must identify solutions and chart a roadmap in terms of addressing the solution are the ones that we must spend time on. And that's me and you. That's me and you. Those are the ones that we must spend time on. And because remember, most of these people also come with their traumas, their own perceptions, and all of that. So the awareness and the education that they were talking about there, we must look at it at a much more basic level. At a very, very basic level. And that is what, in the objectives of developing that sign-up that we looked at. But we also said to ourselves, this is not a journey that we're going to walk on without faith-based organizations, without traditional organizations like your, it's no longer traditional healers, ne? Where's it's indigenous? Or traditional medicine, okay, yes. Traditional medicine practitioners, and all of them. Doctor spoke about issues of, at some stage, cultural influences, spiritual influences, but it's because we know that as a people, when we've no options, we lean on the convenient reason. And normally the convenient reason is that, this person has got a cultural calling, this person has a spiritual calling, probably culturally and what. Let me tell you something that shocked me the other day. I was in a school in Mamelodi. It's Mamelodi, Nekidimo? Yes. Segofatso. We had a session with Epilepsy SA there to educate parents and make them aware. Do you know how many learners drop out of school because of misdiagnosis of seizures? And that number is very alarming, because when we started to talk about it with the Department of Basic Education, and we said to them, most of your learners in grade 11, and we know the pressures that come with grade 11, which the doctor spoke to, all of that, the coping and everything, when those learners in grade 11 before their matric experience seizures and all of that, the first things the school does is to call who? The family. They call the parents. The next thing you know, the letter comes to the school, the child has a spiritual calling, they have to drop out of school and they never come back. So you can imagine the number of learners that we are losing that have not matriculated, a simple matric in South Africa, due to that aspect of not having adequate knowledge at that level of family. Because that's what is likely for us to lean on as a possible solution, because we don't have options. So collaboration with all these organizations becomes very critical. In churches and so forth. Now, we have identified training as something that we need to do, and regularized training, not just once-off training and once-off capacity building, because this is not a subject that you can train once, but training of different levels in the pipeline of what we need responses on. I don't want to talk about policy alignment and all of that. But I just want to say, the issue of early identification becomes very critical. And early identification doesn't just rest with the Department of Health. Ourselves, in our families, in our homes, we need to be empowered to do so. Hence, I'm calling on all of you here to say, wherever you are, in whatever spaces that you're in, the global call of action that says, let's make people aware. And how do we make people aware? Let's empower ourselves with the knowledge and the information. If you know that you would require a reinforcement in terms of knowledge when you are in a particular gathering, they've shared that you can reach out to particular organizations to support you. Not everything is about a catering. Not everything is about creating, going into a boardroom. There are lots of spaces that we can use. I'm still to see schools that refuse people gathering in their grounds, gathering, asking for a classroom for a particular time just to have a conversation on this with educators. I'm still to see a hospital refusing social workers educating others on this. I'm still to see, but we don't. What I'm trying to say is that I'm calling on all of you to actually do something in the spaces that you're in. I'm still to see disability units of students online posting videos on issues around epilepsy and mental and neurological conditions. And let's support the sign-up. We're going to go on these workshops in the provinces, reaching out to the provinces, because we want to multiply this matter. We still have a situation where we want to have medical practitioners like Dr. here coming with us on this journey. We have national games for persons with intellectual disabilities and children with intellectual disabilities coming in South Africa. These are games where we are trying to say, even in sports, persons with epilepsy and other mental and neurological conditions have room to participate and can be who they want to be. They can be our champions, and we have seen examples of such. So we're going to also call on you to support such initiatives, and let's work collaboratively with all other organizations. Let's not limit ourselves in our spaces and not reach out. Reach out. There's a lot we can learn from each other. So that's what we're going to be doing at that level of planning and policy making, but also at the level of awareness raising, supporting our organizations and so forth. Let's create leaflets, pamphlets, where we educate people on epilepsy, so that we stop this stigmatization and all of that. But as I'm about to conclude, we're working with the Department of Health. I'm not going to share much about that. There are different segments within their non-communicable sections that are dealing with different disabilities as per what their prescriptions are. So we're working with that. Addressing the issues of employment, as I close, is that the one thing we must know, just latching on to what Marina said, SASSA, you will qualify for SASSA if you demonstrate that you have no ability to get a job because of your disability. That is the one element of that criteria that you must have in mind. That is why not all persons with albinism, for instance, qualify for a disability grant. Not all of them. I'm just giving an example with albinism, because you can get employment. And the one impediment that we're experiencing currently when we create employment opportunities is that people do not disclose their disabilities out of fear, of course, but also we must overcome that fear and disclose, because when we go to and hold institutions accountable and they show us documentation, they say, but people have not disclosed. So you can't blame us for not recruiting. In our ads and everything, we have indicated that they are a priority. So I want to say to you, it's upon us to deal with issues of stigmatization. It will take us doing that. And that way teaching and unlearning others so that we foster for acceptance. I'm sure you're all aware that the Department of Higher Education has lifted all their requirements for entry into institutions of higher learning. Grade 10s, 11s, 12s, and NQF 4 is now included in all ads in institutions of higher learning when they're recruiting for students and all of that. It wasn't the case last year. It's the case this year. In all your TVETs, that has been lifted. So it's upon us also to ensure that when we know that there are children who dropped out of primary school at grade 10 with a level of vocational training, and we know that there's a TVET that offers that particular training, we should then reach out to that particular TVET. I have the evidence, by the way, I'm not just talking, because we have been analyzing and mapping and seeing if ever that's been done. And it is being done. So hence I'm saying the political will we've got, it's us now working with those that must make things happen and change to get them to do the necessary changes. Yeah. So let me pause there and thank you very much for allowing me this time to speak on this. There's a lot I can say, but for today, let me pause here. Thank you very much.
I think often we on the ground side look at government and go, they don't care about us. I don't agree that that's a universal. Thank you, Pootie, for sharing these words. I think it's important. And the fact that the sign-up is going where it's needing, I think for some people this feels like big language that's not making any relevance to you. I can tell you that I have educated myself. I've learned things in the last 2 years about where the work that is being done is going, and it's going to change lives on the ground because we've got a direct policy change, and we're seeing that happen. So thank you for being a champion for that for us and this community. We are now moving into the next part of our program, and that is our next panel discussion. I would like to call forth our moderator, Mr. Solly Mahata. Solly is our branch director from Free State Northwest. He has been with the organization for over 3 decades and is an experienced hand working with both communities, social workers, and persons with epilepsy in residential care. He is a deeply experienced senior social worker, a remarkable leader, and a mentor to many. Solly, you are welcome. I'd like to call forth our other panelists. Could I please call Miss Lucy Makunyama? Lucy, come up. Lucy grew up in a small village near Polokwane, Limpopo, and is a person with epilepsy, a mother, and a proud recipient of an Epilepsy Educational Trust bursary, and for her studies towards a Bachelor of Commerce degree. She has 2 beautiful kids, Chiamo and Chulafelo. Okay. I'm still waiting to see the photos. You haven't shown me yet. And has recently joined the National Board of Epilepsy as a youth representative. She is a proud Epilepsy South Africa ambassador. Lucy, you are welcome. Next, I call up Mr. Dominic Pace. Dominic is a powerhouse champion for the cause of epilepsy. As a person with epilepsy himself, he has served in a number of community and service roles over the years, including search and rescue. So if we lose any of you, we're sending Dominic. He undertook the famous Camino de Santiago, an historical route in Spain and Portugal that draws pilgrims from around the world. Mr. Pace took on the challenge, and I think you walked approximately 135 kilometers in about a week. It is an incredible distance to walk with support in raising funds for the Epilepsy SA Educational Trust and to raise awareness for epilepsy in South Africa. Dominic has recently joined the Education Trust as a trustee. He is a proud Epilepsy South Africa ambassador. Dominic, you are welcome. There's some ructions about succession planning. Good colleagues, before you begin, remember one thing. We are here as a community, and today we're going to talk about our lived experiences. I'm going to encourage our panel to open up to as many questions as possible, because you yourself have them as well. Jackie, I see you're on the stage, and I've forgotten to mention Prof. Jackie Allo. And that is very remiss for me, because I've been seeing Jackie many times today as we've been moving this room around and making this venue happen. So I'm firstly going to ask all of us to give a round of applause to Prof. Jackie and the team from Wits University for hosting us. There's some amazing students and energy levels here, and it was very kind of them to allow us to be here. I hope the start of a long relationship with this educational institution. Jackie is an aspiring mother of a young person with an inspiring mother of a young person of a person with epilepsy, and has thus got a great deal of experience as a carer of a person with epilepsy. As a lecturer here at University of Wits, Jackie has been greatly involved with the Engendering Disability Inclusive Development, or EDID project, which has been running from April 2020 and will continue to 2027. It's a 7-year transnational initiative by the University of Guelph in Canada, and in collaborations with partners in Canada, South Africa, Vietnam, and Haiti. It brings together disabled people's organizations, or DPOs, researchers, policymakers, and civil society to address the intersectional barriers, as I'm sure many of you will know, faced by women and girls with disabilities. Prof. Jackie, you are most welcome.
Thank you.
And on that note, Sally, you can tell me to be quiet now. I think you can carry on. Before you do, I'm going to do, because I keep forgetting in the back of my mind, we have some wonderful members of the media here. At the back, we have 2 wonderful gentlemen with cameras. Please raise your hands. There we go. They are welcome, and would very much like to interview some of you as persons with disability. Those of you who stood up earlier and acknowledged yourselves as persons with disability, Des at the back would very much like to make sure that we are in contact with you. This Indaba is about bringing us together, not saying how's it and then we'll see you next year. Okay? We are making connections here today. If you do not agree with me, don't clap. So clap. We're coming together. So please, do not leave here without connecting with us. Please take time to be interviewed with the gents. They are available now for 1 or 2 of you who want to steal away, but otherwise, please, our audience is here. This is a very passionate day. Solly, you need to control me now, because I've had too much coffee. I'm leaving in your hands.
Thank you, Jason. And good morning, good afternoon.
Yes.
Good afternoon to the guests to this occasion. I am really honored to be moderating this session on lived experiences. I think lived experiences are very critical, in the work of SINAP, particularly, if we look at the various pillars of SINAP. So we're just going to have a conversation, of the people, in front of us, who will take us through their lived experience, in that being able to connect with what SINAP intends to achieve. So as to open, I'm just going to go to my friend next to me, Dominic. Dominic, to introduce himself and share with us his experiences of being diagnosed with epilepsy and how he interacted with the systems in terms of that.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dominique. So I was diagnosed from very young. I was officially diagnosed at the age of 5, but doctors later then picked up that I was probably born with it. I'm 32 years old, so I've lived with it all my life. I think at that age you sort of grow up and become used to it. It's the norm for me. I've never allowed it to define who I am. Obviously, I have my days, as everyone does. We all got crosses to carry, highs and lows. But as Jason said, I'm part of search and rescue, and that's a high stressful environment. It is not my only task that I do. It's a voluntary work. As everyone's probably been following what's been happening up in Limpopo with the floods and stuff, I was there 2 weekends in a row, Palabora and Pafuri. So doing things like that has never stopped me. My work environment, I'm involved with the family business, also a very stressful environment. Living with epilepsy, or being a person that lives with epilepsy and going to hospital, there were stages growing up that, it got to a point where a particular ambulance crew from Netcare back in those days, I was, grade 5, grade 6, if I remember correctly, knew Friday, Dominique, so address, is going to have a seizure. It was so frequent at that point, I'd collapse. It was almost routine for them. They would be there. As the years grew on, it got better for me. And then as the years went on, I stopped having seizures for a period, and then maybe up until 4 or 5 years ago, my seizures came back out of the blue. So as I've grown older, it became a bit trickier to manage, especially when you're in a work environment, in the voluntary work I do and all the community stuff. What I can say though is being and having access to private care, fortunately, and seeing what's available in the public sector, especially now while I was up in Limpopo, at the particular hospital that we were stationed the jock out of. I was taken aback, not in a negative side, but to see that what government is putting out in building infrastructures and new hospitals going up, it's quite interesting. I live here in Johannesburg, but there's just as good facilities, and maybe this is the challenge, is what can be done for those outlying provinces, because we in private care have the access to neurologists, to people, care workers and all that, the access to information. But I didn't see, unfortunately, the same access for those people in those townships.
Yeah. Lucy, your experience in Limpopo, when you were diagnosed and if you went to the public health system, how were you seen by the doctors, the nurses and the social workers?
Okay, I'm so nervous. I need to draw some energy from the ladies who were here because they were so fantastic. Anyway, my name is Lucy, as they have introduced me. I was born and raised in Limpopo, in a small village in Mashashan. Unlike Dominic here, I think his parents were aware of what was going on with him. With me, nothing. Like, my parents didn't know what was happening. I didn't know what was happening. No one in the village or in the community knew what was happening to me. I'll start where, like I beginning. Okay, I was like 12, 13, I was doing grade 7, and I was playing outside, I think like just near the gate at home. Then we were playing like kick the ball, and then I fell and I did not understand what was happening with me. It took so many years to understand. Even today when Dr. Ruiz was talking, that's where I was like, oh, that was what's happening with me at that time. Oh, okay, so that was very helpful. So when I fell, I just fell in, it wasn't like the ones where you fall and you take time and people will even see what happened to you. No one saw, my friends didn't see. They just thought I fell and then that's it. But I did not know what happened, how, and then I stood up, I excused myself from the game. I didn't tell my parents, and then it happened over the weeks, over the days, and then I had to tell them. They were now seeing me also. They did not know what was happening with me. So we just call it a thing, like Insipediki Ndwela. It came back, Ndwela came back. So that was it, and that was the life. And you know, I stopped going to play with my friends. There were people that I would visit, but I remember visiting this one friend, like a family friend. She was older than me, she was a sister, and then she gave me water in a glass tumbler. I drank from it, and then it dropped. Something happened, like as doctor explained, that something happens without you, like saying it should happen. You know, when you pick up a glass or whatever, that, and in that moment it just happens. I broke that glass. And I remember feeling so angry, feeling so confused, feeling so like this Ndwela, as I said, it's taking over my life, it's taking over me to a point that I can't even be trusted with, you know, neighbors, tumblers and stuff. So it was hurtful, and I didn't know what was happening, so I went back home. Then my mom started asking around, talking to friends, telling them what's happening with her daughter, and one of the friends told her about a neurologist in town that deals with headaches and stuff of the brain. Then we went to that doctor. It was the only time I went to a private institution. I went there, they checked, they did that thing that they showed on the screen, the EEGs, the EEG, and they did that. That was the most. I'm busy writing a book, so when I do publish it, you'll see in my book how I explain that day. How I talk about that. That day was so exciting for me. Someone would say, how can that? It was exciting. I was gonna know what this thing that I don't know is called. I was gonna know what's going on with me. So when they put those cables, I remember they said I must not put on lotion on my hair and stuff. So I washed my hair in the morning. We went to the neurologist. They put some stuff, and I was sitting there. They were telling me, close your eyes, open your eyes. They were doing those things. I was so excited. I was so fidget, like I was so happy that day. And then they said, okay, you have epilepsy. It had a name, finally. Like finally we can name it. They gave me medication. And then I continued to have seizures. It didn't stop that day, unfortunately for me. So I continued having seizures. Like now it was getting worse. Now it was worse. So I ended up going to like a public, because my parents could not afford to take me to the neurologist again. It was expensive, medication was expensive, so they took me to a public hospital. They explained, they gave the doctors the letters that I got from the neurologist, and I was put on medication at a public hospital. So now I started going to a public hospital. Should I go on, or do you
Well,
have
I just
more?
want you to share with us what was your experience when you got to the public health system, and how were you treated?
It was good. It was good. 6, 7. It was the government is here, guys.
The government can only improve moving forward.
Okay.
The thing is, say what you need to say in terms of your experience, your personal experience.
Okay, from what I was hearing when they were here, I'm thinking when I got there, my seizure was active. Like my first time in a public hospital, I was in an active seizure. They gave me drips or whatever. Then after that, they literally just gave me medication. They didn't screen me for anything. They didn't. It was just a matter of question and answers. Is this happening to you? Are you this? Are you that? They gave me medication. I went home, and then I don't know how my parents did that, but Dr. Visa said something about a diary. My parents did that for me at that age. They just thought they should do it. So they would write in the book or no. So even after I got my medication, I still got seizures. Then my mom was, oh my God, that lady, bless her. My mom was like, no, we are going back. You're still having seizures. It's been 2 days, we are going back. And we'd go back and tell the doctor, hey, the doctor, she's still following this person. And my mom, I think my mom was fighting for, because when I was initially diagnosed, they told her that with every fall, my brain gets damaged. Something in my brain gets damaged, memory or something. And my mom was like, my child, I'm not gonna lose her to this. I'm not going to have her lose her future to this. So she was fighting for that. And she would take me back. When I go back, no screening, nothing. Up the doors, go home. Same procedure until I was like in grade, I think 11. And that now was my life in high school. You know, like it was difficult. And then I think grade 11, I dislocated something that Sepang said. He injured his shoulders. I dislocated my knee, like I fell and then my knee got dislocated, and then I was sent to a public hospital, and I got there. It was still on the side, like this cap was still on the side, and I got seizures in that state. So I would, you know, like the knee has to be straight, or I don't know, but it can do something. So imagine having seizures when your knee has to be in a certain position. So it was doing that, and it got injured more, and that angered, I think, my dad, and they called, and now they tested me. I think they tested me again at that age and diagnosed me at the public hospital, and then I got more medication, or they changed my medications. At that time they would say it's trial and errors or something. And then that it started being controlled. Then it was controlled. But just to address,
at this moment, as you're going through all this experience, did you feel that you were treated as a person or just as a patient and a person with epilepsy? Did you feel seen as a person?
Okay, I'm not sure I'm understanding you right, but
what I mean is that, you know, when you were being dealt with, you were being dealt with as Lucy, and everybody understood you as Lucy as a person, or you were just an epilepsy patient.
Yeah, I was just treated as a number, another one with epilepsy. It's not, no one took time to understand me or my needs. And as the panel before, I'm understanding they had to understand me, take me to a social worker, take me, you know, or maybe let me know, because I was young, I was not aware. My parents were not aware. I'm hearing what Ma'am Puti said about that we should also stand up for ourselves. But I can now stand up for myself because I'm aware. And I guess my siblings, my parents, everyone around me can now stand up for someone who's epileptic. But at that time, I needed someone who knew better to stand up for me, but they didn't. They did not take the proper channels, as I'm hearing today, like, almost 20 years later. I'm hearing today that no, it was not how it should have been.
I think that highlights the whole issue of carers, that were around you. And I would actually like to bring in the Prof. Jackie here, that what has been the experience as a carer, looking at the progression of the condition of epilepsy?
I loved what Lucy said about her mom, that her mom fought. And I think that as somebody who has children that have epilepsy or children that are in any way like atypical, be it physical, neurological, that's what you become. You become somebody who fights for your child. You fight to get them diagnosed because you're told that there's something wrong here. In this country, I mean, when it came to my son, all the way through preschool, people were going, he's a bit different. And we don't really know what it is because he wasn't having grand mal seizures. He had temporal parietal lobe absence seizures. And so it didn't look like what was typically thought of as epilepsy. And so, did he have ADHD? Was he on an autism spectrum? What was he? But I think we got to a stage when he was in grade 2 where the school, and it was, a small school around the corner from us, came to us and said, well, whatever is wrong with your child, we just are not equipped to deal with him. So we think you need to see an educational psychologist. And so we saw the educational psychologist. And she said, well, I think that he should see a neurologist. And the problem with trying to get a pediatric neurologist in South Africa, both public sector and private sector, they are very few and far between. Okay, and in the public sector, they are very expensive as well. And so even if you are a parent who can afford medical aid, it costs a lot of money to see a neurologist and getting diagnosed. And the neurologist was, she spent time with him, talked, talked with us, and said, no, I think he has ADHD. Let's just treat him for ADHD. And as we walked out, she stopped and said, no, actually, I'd like an EEG. 2 days later, after the EEG, all that I knew is that the technician that was doing the screening, she just reckoned this is one really busy mind, because it was also really hard to get him to sit still. I still don't know how you get kids to sit still and do this. I think it's like the people who do this are absolutely amazing. I got a phone call, but not from the doctor, from the doctor's PA, saying, your son has epilepsy. Go and have a brain scan so we can see that it's not physical, and come and fetch a script. And so, I mean, this narrative that, private is better, private is more helpful, not so much. And I mean, when we did see the private neurologist, we saw her for 15 minutes, and it was really expensive, and it wasn't really helpful because medicine treats the medical condition, it doesn't treat the holistic condition. And that's a problem, and it doesn't necessarily help the family or ask, answer questions or, help you explain to your child what is happening to you. And I think what was a great blessing, because I am privileged in the fact that I do have resources being at a university. And so when this neurologist decided to immigrate somewhere else, I needed to find another one, and I couldn't find a neurologist in private practice who had a space. And so I phoned the Donald Gordon, and we have one of the best pediatric neurologists, not just in South Africa, in the world here. She sat
with my son for an hour and a half, and she charged me 500 Rand for that. And she was a game changer. She really was. That's somebody who worked in a setting where it wasn't just, and you can understand the commercialization and commodification of medicine. People have studied long, they need to make a living, and they've got premises and they need to see so many people, and why this happens. But to be in a university environment where you have access to a pediatric neurologist who will sit and take the time out to speak to your child and then to speak to you and help you understand, that was amazing. It really was. The other thing is that then we had, no school would take my son because he was too smart to be, he was too different to be in a mainstream school, but too smart to be in a special needs school. And so we had to find a private school that would cater, and nothing, there was no school that was really a good fit, because, they either did one or the other. They didn't do both. And so, I think an environment where you have, good mainstreaming, with support for people who have special needs would be great. Because I think for anybody who has a child with special needs and neurological needs, the cost is quite substantial in getting all the other support, the occupational therapy and all kinds of other things, and then just getting through school. And what I didn't know, because nobody told me, is that with epilepsy comes anxiety. And so my son is incredibly anxious. And as Charlene will tell you, his anxiety level can go from to here in 2 minutes. He's there, and you're trying to scrape somebody off the ceiling and calm them down, and putting them into a functional workplace, an educational system that caters for that. And so, I laugh that the one of the perks about being at WITS is that we get free. Our children can come here and get bursaries and go through education systems. But this is not the university for my son, so he had to go somewhere else where, because it was private, they could pay for somebody. They had a psychologist and who worked with him every single week to help him get through his degree, and he flourished in that. But I mean, I acknowledge my privilege because, we could put this in place. But I also think that for a parent, what is also difficult is dealing with the community around you, is that, your church thinks that you've done something incredibly bad and that you're cursed. Your family want to know when are they going to be fixed? And you want to go, sometimes, and there once again, you have to become an advocate. You have to say, some things are not fixable, and it's okay for them not to be fixed. Because this idea and standard of perfection that we have in society is nonsense. Nobody's perfect. And how uninteresting we would all be if we were all perfect and perfectly the same. And so, there's a lot of advocacy and championing that goes into, doing this. And I mean, we're still doing it. I mean, he's finished his honors degree, but now we have to find him a job in a profession that he's chosen that is very high intensity. He wants to be a screenwriter, he does 3D animation, and these are very, very high pressured career. And then you want to go, and if you diagnose to these people that you have, special needs, especially anxiety, will you get a job? And so, I mean, the whole debate about, with your child, do you identify, do you disclose? I mean, it would be lovely if we were in a world where everybody was lovely and accommodating. But these are situations and, decisions that we can talk to them about, I can talk to my child about, but, ultimately, he has to decide what it is that he wants to do.
I think, Prof, thank you. What you've raised is that these experiences clearly showing us that, managing epilepsy is not only a clinical thing,
Right.
there is really critical issues around the social, emotional, and economic circumstances, and I'm sure you have so far attended to that. What I want to come to you, Dominic, what has been your experience with stigma, and how has stigma affected you?
Stigma for me. So I think the biggest challenge around stigma for me was in school. I don't hold on to grudges. I just look, I laugh, I smile, and I wave, and I move on. Simply because sometimes you can't help it when people don't know any better. What I know now, I wish I knew then, to help inform better. In school, you're obviously still young, you're schooling, you're there to learn. I went to 8 different schools before I matriculated. Similar reasons, because schools couldn't provide, the schools that I went to couldn't provide adequate support because of my seizures. Either too bigger classrooms, or too small of a classrooms, or not enough support for someone that needs that care and support. So I had to be in a remedial school ultimately. And just to give some context, I was in grade 7, I couldn't read or write. And they were just passing me along because I was in the sports team, and they were quite happy that my parents were funding the sports team as a sponsor. And then when that came to light, it was like, oh wow, okay, this is great. We're pulling out and we're taking our kid with. So it's like, what sort of school is this that, and it's a remedial school, I won't mention names. But we had to quickly make a plan, because when you're in grade 7, you should be able to read or write already. It's crucial stages of a childhood's life. And being an epileptic on top of it made it even harder for me. But grade 10 to 11, I was bullied to a point where I had no friends really in the school. It was more like they purposely trying to flash lights. Little did they know that flashing lights do nothing to me. I know it affects other epileptic people, but it was like a real joke. It's like, can't help, stupid, sorry. That's just really, I really laugh at them. It's like, sorry, try, better luck next time. It's one of those things, you can't help them. So I put up with a lot. But in today's time, moving fast forward to what I see in the stigma is, I've got one employee, and I often chat to her, and I ask her, Mildred, what is going on as a person that lives in the township? What is it that you face in stigma? And it's like, I'm scared of talking to my family, I'm scared of talking to my friends about what I got, and I try and inform her what I know, how to deal with it. So I sort of mentor her. I recently, like in the last few years, became aware about the whole, what we can do as people with epilepsy, how to file our SARS stuff, the benefit as a person living with, on the side of SARS. And I said, here's documents, go do this. Ask my mom for help that deals with all the company HR stuff and that side of things, and she'll help you. I incentivize and try and help her. It's one person that I can with in my direct access. So I've seen the change in her because she feels comfortable from an employee side. There's a lot that's happened to me that I don't have to worry. I tend not to worry. I try and help because that stigma is out there. When I see it happening to other people, it frustrates me, it hurts me, it's like I want to punch him in the teeth. But my sisters taught me something very valuable, and it's like we treat the enemy with kindness. And eventually they'll turn and realize, but hang on, why aren't they giving in? They'll want to know what's going on, and they'll look into it and say, yeah, hang on, there's a lesson to be learned.
Thank you, Dominic. In South Africa, epilepsy is still misunderstood. and sometimes linked to fear and superstition or exclusion. So I would like to go to you, Lucy. Growing up in the area, Mashishane, what were the superstitions that you had to be confronted with, and how did you deal with it?
I also faced the stigma and those things in high school because I got diagnosed when I was like grade 8, and in the rural areas I would have been, when you get in contact with people that are from a different world from you. When I was growing up, I thought because I thought maybe I'm seeing the difference in me and Dominic like a lot, and I'm thinking I always thought I would probably have it easy if we had money, if we had more knowledge, if we were living up there. But I can see that it's everywhere. The stigma is everywhere. In my area, I could have been one of the kids that a letter was sent that this child has a calling and they no longer go to school. Luckily, my parents did not believe in that. But that at school, I was profiled, I was told those things. I was never paid attention to. It was that thing of your family is in denial. Your family is in denial. The teachers, they would. Unfortunately for me, I was a very smart kid, very smart. Even if I missed class, I would still pass. I still passed my matric with very good marks, very, very good marks. So I'm thinking, they would say, let's say I have a fit in class, would send me outside, go sit outside because you don't want to go home. Go sit outside, you are disturbing other kids. You have something, there's something wrong with you, you should accept it. And my peers, some would say, I have an ancestral calling. Yeah, those ones. And you should like follow their calling, you should go and trust those things, you should do those things. And I never did. I struggled through grade 8, 9, 10, 11 until 12, and I passed with, I was one of their top students. So I don't know why the way, because I was one of their top students. But as I was listening to when the government was talking, they said they went to a school and there's people who drop out, and I'm thinking I could have easily been one of those kids. I could have easily been one of those kids. I did not change schools and stuff, but it was not nice. It was difficult. I had to work twice as hard because I would miss class, I would miss lessons. Sometimes I'd have a fit in class, means memory loss of whatever happened on that day. So I would now need to go study for the previous day. So it was difficult. It was very difficult. The stigmas did really follow. Even now, there's still people who are like, when I tell them about this event, they're like, why? Like, you're wasting your time. Why don't you just accept your calling? So
thank you, Lucy, for that. I think it's very insightful to understand that. Despite the challenges, I think I can see in you the resilience and that you're trying to work through that. It's extraordinary, that you have managed and you are even writing a book. I'm just going to give each one of you just a few minutes just to give us, what gives you hope and what has helped you survive in this difficulty, through these difficulties. Just those two. I'll start, with Prof over there.
I think it was really interesting. I went to a special meeting at school once, and there was somebody from a very, very well-known upmarket Johannesburg school that was there, and she said, "You have 2 special needs children, you must be cursed." And you wanted to go, I said, "No, okay." as parents, these are the cards that we have been dealt. We are not going to be given different cards, and these are the cards that we're going to play to the best of our abilities. And we think that, okay, these were two children that needed very special parents, and that's why we got them. Don't see them as anything else, and don't ever tell us that we're cursed, because our kids are the best, and they're a blessing. And yes, it's difficult. You know, could I have been a lot further in my career if I didn't spend so much of my time, especially when they're young, fighting for them? Yes, probably. It could have been tons ahead, but it's fine. I mean, because everybody eventually gets where they're going, and my children are more important than, my career and my status. And, people can be embarrassed about their children and, hide them, but, it's so important to, as parents, surround yourself with great support, great positivity, find education, find help from good places like Epilepsy South Africa. Don't just spiritually Google your way through all these things. And we have an American president that serves the internet. Randomly, you shouldn't do that. Find good information from people and connect, and then also, and instead of complaining, or if you see a need, if you see a problem, think about, well, what is it that we can do? I mean, I'm in disability research because I have the lived experience of myself. My whole family is neuroatypical, and so this is an area where I bring knowledge and also a hang of a lot of passion.
Yeah, I'm just going to ask Dominic and Lucy just to give us short sentences about what gives you hope. One thing that gives you hope, and it's what you keeps you going.
So I've got different phrases, and my one thing that I'll leave with and finish off today is from a very well-known man in this country, which is Madiba, is Ubuntu, I am because you are. And I think if everyone knows and refers back to that saying, I think it's appropriate for our discussions today. So Ubuntu.
Lucy?
I think what gives me hope is the way people were kind. The people who were close to me, they were so kind. I always say, I'm kind today because of the people who were kind to me, who did not treat me different, who did not profile me or say I'm different. Or yes, sometimes it was a matter of trying to prove a point that I'm not different, but they were really, really kind. They showed me love. They were empathetic. So that is what gives me hope. It's what keeps me going and saying, kindness goes a long way. Guys, just be kind, not to people with epilepsy only, but to everyone. You do not know. I'm sorry if I'm taking long, but there's this videos that are trending lately. Sometimes it's a picture where they'll show a building and then they'll show windows and write stuff on those windows or on top of people's heads saying, this one is going through a divorce, this one is going through this one. Be kind. So that's me. Be kind, and the next person will thank you. You don't know how much they need you to just be kind and be empathetic. You do not know what they're fighting, what they're going through. Thank you.
As we close, I just want to emphasize that what we've had today is not statistics. It's true life experiences that people are dealing with. It reminds us that dignity is not optional. Access to care is not a privilege, and lived experience is not an afterthought. It is foundation of meaning for change. And I think as we are here in the Epilepsy Week, what you have contributed goes a long way in many others that don't have access to these forums to say about their experiences and to raise the voice of people with epilepsy and to make sure that they are included and fully included in society. With that, I thank each one of you for your contribution, and thanks to the audience for listening to us.
I have 3 now. We're at the third part of the afternoon. Good colleagues, we are coming to the end of our program, but this is not the end of the conversation. This is very important for everybody sitting in this room today. It's very, very hot today. It's been quite a long day. We started a little later than we needed to, and there's a lot of passion in the room. Many of us want to speak up and speak out. This opportunity extends. This is Epilepsy Week. We treat this as Epilepsy Month, and we work throughout the year. I want to emphasize, please visit the website, epilepsy.org.za. It is filled with useful information in our resources page. When you go to your communities and say, I'm not entirely sure what I want to talk about, in that we have a beautiful compilation of documents called Understanding Epilepsy. That's your number 1 point of call. It starts talking to myths and facts. It tells you how you can explain things. There's things for kids as well. And we're improving it as we go over time. So I must emphasize that to you. Please go and visit it. I understand that we have a challenge. It starts right here at the top, at the most privileged and the most wealthy and the most, we don't have any problems in life, and it transits right the way through to I am the poorest and nobody sees me. We have in common 2 things. The first is epilepsy affects absolutely anyone. Irrespective of your gender, your race, your language, your culture, your religion, your age. It affects everyone. And the amount of people that do not want to talk about it is tremendous, and we need to acknowledge that as well. But the other common thing in life is that we are human beings. Ne? Every single one of us is human beings. We see ourselves as that, and we are working very hard with society to do that. Every one of you in this room has value. You have come to here. And I'm saying this now before we get excited. We've got 2 wonderful elements to this program to finish off. And then we go home, we rush, and now it's transport and tea and lunch and toilets and bye-byes, and you forget to say what you need to say. You have access to more than you need. You have access to more than you know. Through us, through this organization, through the efforts of our partners. Today, you are better off than you were yesterday. Do you agree with that? Yes. Do you agree with that? Yes. Do you agree with that? Yes. Can I get a round of applause, please? Yes. The energy is in the room. The energy is in the room. It is my job, and it has been one of the greatest privileges and one of the greatest challenges as a person in marketing and branding to talk about an invisible disability. How do you show something you can't see? I have learned more in 2.5 years than I ever thought, and I am the son of a nursing sister who nursed for 52 years. My education is ongoing. And I come from a point of privilege, I acknowledge that. But I've worked in the community sector for many, many years, and I know that irrespective of how low, how poor, how far a community member is, they are not without power. Power is knowledge. Knowing about yourself, knowing about your condition, saying, I listened to what Dr. Mendita said, I'm listening to these things, I'm reaching out and saying to yourself, I don't have data. We find a way. Because I've got news for you. 25, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, when we were fighting the HIV pandemic that began, there was no internet. You had the phone and you had each other to talk to. The power of two legs walking from one point to another meant that I can go from here to there and talk to you. Ne? Our ability to communicate hasn't changed. We've just got more tools. Whatever barrier you think that is in place, we can move past that barrier. You are here today as champions of epilepsy, supporters of epilepsy, persons with epilepsy. You can do a great deal more. And I want you to see, as we unpack this end of the program, how important it is that you are still in the room and we still see you. And if you fall asleep, I'm going to come and knock you on the side of the head and say, hey, this is important. And you're good friends. To all and each and every one of you, you are still most welcome. The two last potential points of this program, because I know that suddenly things get added on, but the two things on our program is a very important address by our National Director, Micheline Castle, about turning policy into action. You've heard throughout the day, we've talked about policy, we've talked about this sign app. Charlene's going to unpack it for you. And then we're going to finish our day. We are going to talk about the Epilepsy Pledge. Take your Epilepsy Pledge. It doesn't have to just happen today. We are launching it. It's throughout the year. On our website, you can go and make that pledge. You can make that pledge in private. You can make that pledge and show everybody. But make that pledge. And we will end today's program in a solemn way to acknowledge those that we have lost to epilepsy, with our candlelighting ceremony, which will be here in the front. We're not going to burn the house down. We've got the little electronic candles. So those of you who'd like to join us, we're going to ask you to come forward. Of course, there's a lot more people than we thought would be. We're very happy to see you. So please come through. We're going to take photos together. Please don't rush off. Talk to one another. Get to know one another. Talk to us. This is my chance to say, Gyabonga. Siyabonga. Gelboch. Charlie.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you. And thank you to Putty for grounding us in frameworks and in what is happening in government. And to the Epilepsy Voice panel, thank you for making that so lived. And I want to say to you is that we can get stuck in a lot of, and we know there is so many issues, but I want to say to you there is hope. There is always hope. Today, we've spoken about an enormous amount of information, and where we know the South African Intersectoral National Action Plan is going to Cabinet very, very shortly. But what this represents is, for the first time, the acknowledgement that this is an intersectorial challenge. And that matters, because it signifies the recognition, the coordination, and the commitment of all stakeholders. But we know, even once the policy is adopted, it can go and be put in the drawer. And that's not implementation. Implementation is slower. Implementation is harder. Implementation requires coordination, it requires resources, it requires accountability, and it requires persistence. Implementation happens in very, very, very ordinary places. Clinics, classrooms, indabas, social service offices, workplaces, and you've heard homes. This is actually where policy becomes real. So
Epilepsy South Africa sits in a really unique, beautiful position because we see policy at national and international level. We see quality service delivery realities at community level, and we see the vast gap between the two. So what does the gap show us very practically? And probably a lot of it's come up today. We see that medication is inconsistent across the country. We see that teachers are unsure of how to respond to seizures. The education system doesn't know what to do. Families still carry all the stigma quietly. Employment opportunities still remain limited. Mental health support is often missing, and we've heard how desperate and dire need we are in that. And referral pathways are unclear. So, I can give you a lot of lived experiences around this, around a child having a seizure in a classroom and being told they have to go home and can never come back because there is so much fear of them being possessed, them being cursed, epilepsy being contagious, and all the horrible stuff that comes with the misinformation and the fear. However, a child at a university finishes matric, goes into university. I was one of those people. I would have seizures at university. I would go home, I would get picked up, I would be slept and I would be medicated correctly, and I would be sent back to university with the teachers then having, or the lecturers being exposed and understood and having been given more information. I come from a medical family, and yet only 13 years ago did I start talking about my epilepsy. That shows you the enormous amount of stigma and fear that exists. But my parents going and talking to that lecturer is how implementation is made and is how the difference is made. None of these challenges we're speaking about today are new. But what we do have now for the first time, we have an action plan on how to address them. The question on the table you should all be asking now is not what should be done. The question, and you've heard it repeatedly, is how do we do this together? Because that's the real question. So, what does implementation look like? It's not a national event, but it's many coordinated actions. It looks like the provincial health teams with the Department of the Disability teams in the Premier's office, understanding neurological disorders and epilepsy. It looks like social workers being trained to facilitate peer review groups, which are supports groups in all areas, empowering you to be able to start support groups. It looks like teachers confidently handling a seizure in a classroom. It looks like caregivers being given the support, economically, jobs, care, in support groups. It looks like people with epilepsy participating fully in society. Implementation is practical and it's incremental. For 59 years, Epilepsy South Africa has demonstrated what implementation looks like in practice. Through all the community-based support services we offer, through our social development programs, through our education and aware initiatives, and more recently, through our National Development Hub, which connects people with epilepsy to skills development, to empowerment and economic participation. These are not solutions on their own. They are models that show what coordination can achieve. But the scaling work requires the capacity. The scaling work is what requires every person in this room to help. I just made notes. And no single organization can implement the action plan. The action plan is actually detailed of who is responsible for what on the action plan. Department of Health mentioned there, WITS is mentioned there, Epilepsy South Africa, Department of Social Development, and World Health Organization. We are all mentioned in that action plan because it's intersectorial in nature. So we know it's not government alone. There's no more pointing fingers as people with epilepsy and affected by and say, government must do, social development must do. We've had voices through the last 5 years of the work of what Epilepsy South Africa has gone with partners to provinces to hear what people have to say. Everything in the action plan comes from those consultations. Every single thing from people in the provinces. We gave voice to the voiceless. We gave government officials in this very room an opportunity to give voice and input. Sign-up was circulated through government, through civil society, through so many stakeholders. The action plan is the voice of the people. But scaling needs all the stakeholders. So what is civil society's role? It's critical, it's non-negotiable, because we are closest to lived experience. We see the gaps quickly. We test solutions. We're able to offer solutions. And we connect communities to systems. The Indaba helps us build relationships in all these aspects. And as we move forward, all this matters. Because first comes coordination, and this has got to become routine. Implementation, you've heard me, requires the collaboration of all. Second is capacity building. This has to continue. Health workers, social services, educators, community organizations, all of the coordinators need to work together. Don't think that's easy. Don't think there's not a huge amount of arguments and debates and people going, well, maybe we should do this, and we have to say, but we did that 2 years ago, or maybe we need to do that, and no, that was done 5 years ago. There's so much, people are people, but every debate is exciting. Every challenge we're faced with is good, because anything worth fighting for can't come easy. The third thing is lived experience has to remain central to every single conversation we have, not symbolic. I want people with epilepsy to be in the boardroom, at the tables, not against the walls, not telling somebody that this is what should be done. It's when I'm at the boardroom table I can talk boldly, shout loudly, and argue easily, and say, I have to write my speech down today because my short-term memory from the 60 or 70 generalized seizures in the last 5 years is no longer what it is. I forget things. I've got all sorts of tools around me on my cell phone. I repeat myself. These are things people need to understand. And if I'm not telling you, you don't know. So what happens after today is the implementation, and it really matters so much. People with epilepsy are not just beneficiaries of policy, they're partners in every way. And I'm proud of all 15 of you that you put up your hands today, because that matters. So what happens today is that when a seizure occurs in the classroom, it's understood. When medication is not available, it's made available. When stigma happens in the workplace, it's faced. And when families need support, they are offered support, and all this matters. Today is not about agreements. Today is about each of you deciding, what are you going to do leaving today? What is your epilepsy pledge? And so on behalf of Epilepsy South Africa, I'm going to read you our pledge. We are committed to ensuring that the South African intersectorial national plan on epilepsy and other neurological disorders is meaningfully implemented across health, education, social development, and our communities, and to strengthen South Africa's collective voice so that no person with epilepsy is ever left behind. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to give you back to Jason. Should I walk across? Jason, oh Jason, here's Jason.
I have one job description. I do many jobs. I just want you people to appreciate me. We have come to the end of the program. Aren't you relieved? No, because we still have a lot of work to do. So we're going to leave this room today with obviously a lot of heat. And we're a little bit tired because there's a lot that we've had to think and talk about today. But we are going to use this opportunity to have a newfound spirit. I'm slightly ADHD, so when somebody else is doing something else, I'm paying more attention to them than to myself. So here's what we're going to do now. We are laying out our epilepsy logo on the table here, and we have candles in this box. Liz, can you help me there with that? And isn't that beautiful? We don't have enough for everybody, we have enough. So if you would like to come up, please start coming up. Take a candle, have a moment of silence, make a prayer, however you would like to do it. And use this opportunity to share your thoughts with yourself and share it here in our candle lighting ceremony.
And in addition, for the individuals that we are remembering, there are 50 million people globally that are diagnosed with epilepsy. So when you are putting your candle down, you are putting it down to light the path forward for every one of the 50 million people globally. And know that that's what you're doing. So please, can each of you come? Once you put it down, stand to the side, let us take a beautiful picture of everybody. Come on, you've got energy, and then we're going to have a lovely lunch once a pledge is done. you just take your seats before you put, as you put your candles down, just so we can close out with the speakers. So please, can everybody come back inside? I just need another 10 minutes with everybody. And can I just ask each of the speakers to come up to the stage on the sides of the candles? So can I have Lucy and Dominique and Solly and Putti and Vuyiswe and Marina and Jackie? And yeah, everybody. And Zanelli, I think I said you already. Just come up. Let's go and stand outside. Putti, come. So, Putti, you stand up. Putti and I have stood shoulder to shoulder for the last number of years to get to where we are. And once again today, you've heard from both of us recommitting to the full plan being implemented. And I want to honor each of the voices that have sat up and stood up today bravely with incredible information and incredible knowledge to take you on our journey. So we've made a pledge as Epilepsy South Africa, and I'm going to ask each of the speakers to make a pledge now just off bat in terms of what their pledge looks like for the next year.
I pledge to continue commitment to advocating for epilepsy, inclusion and quality of life for persons with epilepsy.
I pledge to commit myself to support people who are living with epilepsy.
I pledge to raise awareness one person at a time, because when you have a fit or a seizure, your life is in someone else's hands, so they need to be aware of this disease.
Okay, I pledge to continue driving the agenda for inclusion and ensuring that we mainstream disability and also specifically matters of epilepsy and persons with neurological conditions at the level of policy towards implementation and actioning.
I pledge to continue working with the leadership of Epilepsy South Africa, and personally to continue advocating for all epilepsy people living with epilepsy in South Africa to create awareness, how to better themselves and continue on keeping their spirits high in difficult times.
I'm Marina Clark. I pledge to continue fighting for the implementation of the South African Intersectoral National Action Plan on Epilepsy and other neurological disorders.
I pledge to continue to explain, decode the brain and provide information to people who need it. I pledge to continue to listen both to what people say and don't say, which is very important, to help walk the journey with people with epilepsy.
I pledge, as Charlene, to continue sharing my story to give hope to anyone else with epilepsy. And I pledge to share and teach as many people as I can in the next months seizure first aid. And it doesn't matter how many seizures I have in the next 12 months, I pledge I will get up by God's grace and continue ensuring that SINAP is approved and implemented across South Africa to change the lives of persons with epilepsy. Thank you, everybody. Please come, have a bite to eat with us. It's finger food. Have a cool drink each, and please travel safely. Thank you, everybody.
I'm gonna pay it myself. I just need assistance. Last issue was because the thing is there was a lot of other things that I went to fetch today. So now there's an application of things. This is a great thing.